So I've got this table that I'm restoring, and it's lifted at most unions. I forgot to show it to you beforehand. Here's a good example. This is minor compared to what I've already done, but you can see how that level is, it kind of puckers up. It lifts between those two boards. You can see it more a little further down. There you can kind of see it. It's a hard thing to see. There we go. You can see how it lifts. So the nice thing is that this is all solid wood. So to fix it, I did have some spots that were broken I had to glue up, and so I re-glued those. This was split from the very end where you can see here all the way up to about there, so about halfway, and it's just a little bit of the tongue part, or the groove, the outside of the groove on this one, where this one tongues and grooves together like that. So it's this upper portion where there'd been, in moving it, too much pressure downward here, and it just cracked that all the way up. And someone tried to fix it before, but didn't quite do the job that needed. See, here's a real minor crack, shows an example. That was just about an inch, halfway the length of this table. So I'm sanding it after I've done all the glue ups that I plan to on the top portion of it. I'm gonna leave it because it's nice and rustic. I'm gonna leave that rustic aesthetic to it, so I'm not gonna get it totally planed. So I'll leave little bits of lifts, and let's see here. But it'll be a lot more flat at every union and across the whole thing. And what I'm using to start is a 36 grit, and then I'll go to an 80 grit because that's what I've got on hand, just to smooth it out on the belt, and I'll go over the entire thing with that, and then I'll switch to a random orbital and step it from the same grit, the 80 grit that I'm finished with this belt sander. At least that's the general plan. I might go to 120 on the belt sander and then switch to 100, 120 on the random orbital. I just want to make sure that I'm not leaving a whole bunch of deep scratches like that, because I'll see that. But I might put a few in on purpose on the final product, just because it isn't a rustic aesthetic table, and it'll look a little more like rough cut lumber was used. So that's the plan on this one. Try and get a good full length picture of it for you there. That's it. Here are the legs. So they're boxed together. And again, this is a restoration. It's not full fabrication. So working with the boxes that came with it for the legs on this one. And we'll show more of the transformation as we progress. All right, so to sand the whole top took about 45 minutes to get rid of all the areas that were cupped up and unlevel. And that's just the first round of sanding with the 36 grit on the belt. There's a 4-inch wide belt sander. And let's see where the model number is on here. Yeah. There it is. Okay. So I like this one, gets the job done. It's heavy enough. You can look up the stats on it, but I like it because I prefer some heft to it. I don't want to have to push down with my whole body weight and run the machine and the wood if I gouge out someplace. If you leave it there, it'll gouge, but if you keep it moving, and I go and I alternate directions of the belt, so this way and then this way, so it's pulling this direction and then it's pulling this way, and then I'll go over it in the direction of the grain in each area the best I can before I switch to the random orbital. And then I'll stay at the same grit with the random orbital, starting there with whatever I left off at the belt sander, and then work it down to usually around 120 for something like this. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these nails and I'm going to sink them down so they're just below the counter depth, or the depth of the surface. That way when we put a little finish on it, it fills those gaps in and doesn't leave it right on the surface. So that'll help to unify the color. We're gonna do a paint wash on this from Wooden Home Accents, and we get that. We might leave just a little bit extra to dry a little thick on those areas, and that'll take away the metallic shine, since that's not what I'm going for with this one. I want it rustic, but I don't want it to look like it's directly pulled out of the barn full of nails. So since they used them throughout, so I'll show you how I do that. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm take my punches, I'm going to go ahead and countersink a little bit all these nails that are exposed. So what I'm going to do is I just grabbed my punches, I just went through, looked at the tips, saw what size was not larger. So this is my smallest one that I got out. It's about the size of the head there. And let's see here. Okay, so you can see that one right there. And take it, just give a little bit of a punch to it, just to sink it just below the surface. See, that one just took one. You can see there that the tip of my punch kind of drops down instead of going smooth over it, stops there. That'll allow the paint wash that we use to pool in there, and then it won't show that shiny metal when we get that final finish on. So that one's resisting a little more, so I'm just gonna make sure that I don't damage anything underneath if it doesn't take real quick here. See? Yeah, so things like that, I'll just take a peek below, make sure that I'm not gonna push out anything on the other side before I hit on it harder than I have been. But here I've got some that I thought I was filming on and just took a still shot of it beforehand. But you can see those, it just sinks in. So it's not a lot, 0.5 millimeter to 1 millimeter deep there. Just enough to get some pooling of the paint wash so that it blends in a little more without having to do filler. I could do filler like right there, like was on it, like that. But it gives me the option either way. Letting a little paint wash pool does take a little longer, but if you put filler in and let it dry, cure, it's also going to take a little longer. So not like we're in a big rush with this one. I'm going to make it nice and sturdy and rustic, but we'll get there. All right, that one that wouldn't pound in because it was leaned over. See? So I just tested different angles, saw it moving different. It wouldn't sink in because it was laying down like that. So obviously that's not going to sink back if I hit on it because it's not on the tip down the long axis of the nail. So just have to do some repair there. Looks like I might have some others that I hammered over sideways as well, like that was, because when this was originally put in, it's pounded through from the other side and leaned over, pounded down flat, and then had some filler put over it. So I prefer to keep it flat and just cut it off flush and countersink it if I need to, rather than pounding it over sideways. But that's still totally stable as well without that nail. So if I need to take some others out, then I will, but we'll get it all strong and stable. All right, well, this is as far as we're getting today. Got started on the side and got that. I'm gonna do a rough sand of the whole thing first, so that I know where my baseline is for everything else. So got mostly done on the side. See that old finish? There's a few spots that are a little bit still there, but I just scooted this over. It's where it's hanging off there. Went over it with the belt sander so that we could just get it nice and smooth, and then I'll reroute the top edge after doing all but the last step of sanding. So see, there's some correction I've got to do here. You can see obviously the lower part is not lined up the way it needs to be there, but it's solid, so I'll fix it aesthetically, since structurally it looks funky, but it's all the way where it needs to be. See, there's no kind of wiggle separate from this to that. So just need to clean it up, remove some unnecessary things, and make it nice again, make it smooth. Like I say, this one's going to have a rustic aesthetic, and working with its baseline, not trying to get something that's glass smooth and shiny. Going to be matte. I think we're going to go with a dark wash by Wooden Home Accents on this one, but it'll be a nice, not rough steps like that. So it'll be more like this. But that's as far as we got tonight. The other side used to be like this, you see. Got to fix that there. Might add a little piece of wood there and then reroute it with the rest. But if I do, I'll show you what I do with it. Well, that's as far as we're getting tonight. I'll do more tomorrow. Shut it down because it's quiet time now. So thanks for joining me, and follow for the next step. I'll get these videos all strung together and up so you can see them.